All right, welcome. That was the music of Eric Deutsch from our Soul Song project, one of the new moons of 2022 inspired that particular song. And Obviously, in that video, you see a crescent moon at the side of the Pleiades. That was a couple months back on March 25th. The moon has found the side of the Pleiades once again, but this time under the beams because, of course, new moon today in tropical Taurus in these late degrees where the Pleiades live. In our day and age, the Pleiades, this beautiful cluster that in the ancients was known as the cluster, these stars, the first stars, and many other beautiful names throughout time and space. They, in our day and age, reside right at the cusp of tropical Taurus and Gemini. And so today's Taurus New Moon was right at their side. And of course, we can't see it under the beams of the sun, but I still have the sun in my sky. And as I receive those rays, it's Pleiades, sun, moon, me. In the center of Earth where we are all connected, where we are all one. So what a wonderful thing to hear some of these places that you're beaming in from. The big uneasy, I'm hearing New Orleans described as now, but all sorts of places here in the land that some now call the United States, where I live, and up in Canada way, but east all the way to Ireland and around the world and down under to Australia we go. And I think I saw Brazil and Santiago, Chile. Wonderful, wonderful. And wonderful thing to hear too in this chat with two new grandsons, one born yesterday, Patty, and one just today, Karen. Quite auspicious. It's a very powerful thing. So again, a new moon with the Pleiades, for me, that's like brilliant. I've been in a deep study of the Pleiades this last month in my grounding your fixed stars into your astrology course. Many of you have been joining that journey, and I hope you've got out and waved your quartz crystals at the Pleiades New Moon today, or whatever it is that you chose to do, and connect magically. We will not have a new moon aligned to the Pleiades again for 19 years. That's the metonic cycle that brings lunar phenomena to the same degrees of the zodiac. But at that time, only Electra of these seven sisters, the Pleiades, will have just one toe still in tropical Taurus. So in a sense, this is our last new moon aligned with the Pleiades in the tropical sign of Taurus for like 24,000 years. And it's a big deal. It's astronomically huge. We often, as astrologers, will map the central star of the Pleiades, called Alcyone, into the zodiac. And Alcyone moved from tropical Taurus, processed through Taurus into tropical Gemini in the year 2000. On June 11th this year, Maya, who's my favorite of the Pleiades, Maya mythically is the mother of Hermes, our messenger Mercury. Maya will process after spending more than 2,000 years. Moving through tropical Taurus, Maya will process into tropical Gemini on June 11th, 2023, with her son Mercury right at her side. So I'm really excited to wake up before the sun and see the Pleiades and Mercury rise, reborn as morning stars at that time, and plan to kind of finish some of the work I started today, Pleiadian talismans and whatnot to help increase my celestial sight at that time. But Joe, I got to see a beautiful image that came through you, posted today, I think at a very magical time. So I'm wondering if you can tune us into your experience with the Pleiades this week and today, and what they have to say through you.
Oh my God, it's been so weird. Like even just now, I was taking a shower. I of course got a haircut and everything, and I wrote a hymn for the Pleiades, and I was practicing it because of course I'm gonna read it for you guys. So I wanted to make sure that I did it well, and the lights went out for like at least like half an hour. It was crazy. And this whole week has been like such a strange sort of experience. It was a very, I don't know, it was weird. ever since I started working on this image, like I've been having like a lot of trouble falling asleep, and it's interesting because the Pleiades are said to be like these stars that help open the sight and help open up and like kind of like reveal and illuminate and bring up news. And it's strange that throughout my whole entire night I was just like deep in thought and I couldn't fall asleep, just tossing and turning, and it was definitely wild. And but yeah, so like the way that I approach this, and usually whenever I'm working with these stars, I kind of take them like the week before to kind of like do every day leading up to that actual election, to do a little bit of something, whether I'm like working on the image that I'm crafting, or just like reading up on the star, or I'm just like sitting and meditating, or like writing the hymn. Like each and every day I'm kind of just trying to like really submerge myself in the realm of that star to try and understand what it means. So yeah, I'm gonna share my image and a few of the images as well that I used to craft in. If you guys don't know, I feel like some of you guys might already know, but I work with AI to create most of my images. It's like a collaborative process between the machine and me, and so I'll share a step by step of what of the images I rendered, and then at the end I'll share the image, the final image that I compiled, and I'll also read the invocation to the Pleiades that I wrote, and when I get there, I'll also give you some background, because this was my first time actually using AI to collaborate with to also create the hymn or the invocation. So yeah, I'm gonna share screen if I have the permissions, and I think I do. All right. Brett, can you just let me know that you can see everything?
Success. Yeah, we're looking at a beautiful lantern.
Yeah, so this wasn't actually the image that I started with. I'm gonna go with these in order, out of order, but I'll try and explain my whole entire process as I went. But the lamp, of course, in traditional astrology and traditional astral magic, were for the Pleiades. The symbol of the Pleiades is the lantern, so, or like the like a genie lamp of some sort. And I rendered a whole bunch of them, and I really wanted to get like a crystal one, because of course the Pleiades is said to be related to like crystals and quartz and things like that. And this was the one that I decided to go with. And I'm gonna move forward. I'll go back to that one in a little bit, but I really want to sit with the sisters, because that was my favorite part of the whole image, because of course there are 7 sisters. So as I was sitting and meditating, like, how should my version of the Pleiades look like? I really wanted to, and I was sitting in some of the lectures from Brett's new course, and I think at some point Brett was talking about like the 7 sisters, and kind of like doing something related to the planets, because of course there are 7 traditional planets. So, and because with AI you really just can feed it a lot of words to get back the image to get back an image. I wanted to look back into some traditional astrology sources to kind of invoke the like a sense of the planets within each of these sisters. So I turned to Lily's Christian astrology and his description of how a planet, how a person that's ruled by that planet is supposed to look like. And I copied and pasted that into the AI little thingamajig, and also added a few extra words because I wanted a specific style, and I'll dive into that a little bit later. And these are the 7 sisters that I came up with. This one, I used the description of Saturn, Lily's description of Saturn. This one is, I used Lily's description of Jupiter. This one is totally a different thing. This one, I used Lily's description of Venus to generate it. This one was Mercury. This one was the moon, as you can see with the little like horn, like little thing in the shoulders, the shoulder pad or whatever, and also the queenly crown. I thought that was very interesting that I did not ask for a crown, but the AI still gave me the crown regardless. And this one was based off of Lily's description of what a person ruled by Mars would look like. And this one is, of course, the sun, as you can probably guess. So yellow and so orby-like, I guess. And here is the final image. I think I covered all the sisters, and we'll dive back into some of the other images that I went through. But one of the big things that I wanted to get with this image was the sense of like airiness, and like to really feel like things are like floating in a way. And I went on that because I was looking into the things that are said to be related to the Pleiades, and all of them seem so fresh and airy and kind of ethereal and soft. Like the plant even that's related to the Pleiades is said to be fennel, and I always just find fennel to have such an airy quality to it that I really wanted to feel like the image was really light. And as you can see over here, it's encased within a crystal, and I try to make it feel like you're looking at them through the crystal, and you see these seven sisters. And of course, below their feet, I also added 3 spirits of the wind. And there's no particular reason why they're styled in the way that they are. I really just wanted an image that felt somewhat, I wanted the spirits to feel somewhat daunting and a little scary, but not scary. And I think that was the whole like overall vibe that I was going for this Pleiades image, because they're said to help you also connect with the dead or speak with the dead and hear their words and understand them and things like that. So there's this sense of like dealing with things that are like outside of the norm or a little bit spooky, I guess, that I really kind of wanted to capture. And the one thing that I really liked, and this really comes from Brett, because in one of the lessons from his current course, he also was talking about how in his workings, he wanted to use the seed of life as the glyph for the Pleiades, or a symbol for the Pleiades. And I just thought that was so cool that I had to include it in a way. I was actually not going to use the original glyph, which is this guy over here on the side, but then I was just told in a strange way that I should still use it. So I still used it. And I also have over here on the side the actual shape of that star cluster. But yeah, so this is basically the image and my whole process through it. And one other thing that I actually didn't mention is 2 other things that I didn't mention is that I also wanted to add this orb in the middle over here with that was just expelling light. And usually when I'm trying to work with these images, because they're AI generated, a big part of my work to make sure that all these images work together is, of course, changing and playing around with the original color of the images, but also painting the light, because these images are rendered by a computer, and the computer doesn't have the overall context of how these things are composed. I have to then create my own light source and paint that light source onto it. So all the images that I make for my astral magic works, they usually have that, usually have like light as a big sort of like centerpiece, I guess. There's always something beaming light in one way or another. And I think that's fitting because we're talking about stars and planets and things like that. But this specifically, I wanted to be like a crystal orb that somewhat resembles an eye, because like Brett was saying, they're supposed to like to clear the eyes or open the eyes or open the sight. And I wanted the whole entire the light from the whole entire image to really come from this crystal eye right in the middle of it. And I part of why I use images in my like meditative work or my spiritual work is that I end up just like staring at them for a really long time, and I wanted to place this orb in a point in the image where you can really just stare at it, and the sisters themselves and the spirits below their feet kind of just start to blend into this one cluster or into this one sort of like crystal-like shape. It has like a diamond shape almost that I really wanted to capture, and to feel like the center of this diamond has this beaming crystal eye. And when I read the hymn or the invocation that I wrote as well, I think you're gonna get the sense as to why I did that. I think that I also have a few images. Oh, and the other thing that I forgot, and was also thanks to Brett, because I wouldn't have thought to add that, is that over here up at the top, you actually see a big old bear. Just kind of like in the sky, a little faint, because the sisters and one of them is said to have fled from this bear, like the Orion, the bear hunter, or whatever. And I think I went through all of the images, but there's been a few of them that didn't actually make into the mix. This one was the original background that I wanted, and of course it's very crystalline. And again, like the whole topic of crystals has been like a huge piece in the way that the final image looks. But I also have these two images of fennel that I wanted to implement because, of course, like I said, the Pleiades is said to be related to fennel. So I wanted to put them there in a way, but it didn't end up making the cut just because it just didn't look good. I tried my best to make it look good, as good as possible, because at the end of the day, if we're gonna sit and stare at this image in our meditations, it better look good. That's just my Taurus midheaven speaking, I guess. But yeah, so this was the image, and this was my whole entire process through it. If you guys, I know that most of you guys are more interested in the astrology side of things, but for anyone who is actually interested in the artistic process and how to create an image like that, usually like the whole process takes about like a couple of days to gather all the images, and especially when you have a very clear intention of what you want the image to look. Working with the AI becomes less of like, I'm giving away my power to you to just create whatever you want, and more so like, we're here directing each other in whatever way we can. And especially because with AI, we have this ability to type anything that we want, and almost instantaneously we get an image at the end. I always like to also, like, especially in works like these where we're dealing with like beings and spirits and things like that, to really ask, and before you hit send on that button, like the Pleiades, or in this case, because they were different sisters, with each sister I was like, hey, please just come through this image. Like, I want to see you and I want to understand you. I don't know you that well, like I've done my due diligence, but I really want you to come through this image. And yeah, so that's how that went. But all right, for the hymn actually was a little bit of a different process, and this was my first time trying to do something like this, because I've been a writer my whole life. I've always been writing songs and poems and things like that. So to have the AI write for me it feels a little harder than getting the images. So what I did was I really just sat with the AI again, kind of like using that intention setting as a way to connect with the stars. Like, hey, like there's this machine over here that can just speak words, I guess. Can you please speak through this machine and we can have a little chat? And then I had a little chat and asked a whole bunch of questions to this AI, pretending or channeling the Pleiades, I guess. And throughout our conversation, I grabbed bits and pieces that I really liked, and I also shared some of what I understand the Pleiades to be and to represent, and also some of my intentions of what I want to achieve as I get to meet them, or as I get to introduce myself. And through that, I grabbed all these bits and pieces, and I wrote my own poem first, and then, because the AI is really good at doing things really quickly, and I'm always very nerdy with the things that I write, and I always wanted to play with like the number of symbols there are in a poem, or like the phonetics that are being used, or the phonetics that are being emphasized. And it's really hard for you to, like, as a person, sit and think line by line. Like, each of these lines have to have exactly this many syllables. Each of these lines have to have like this phoneme really sort of emphasized. So I wrote my poem and I asked the AI for each of the lines of the poem itself to be divided. When you divide them, I forget the math term, but if you reduce that number, it will always equal 7. Each line, I think, equals to 14 syllables roughly. So if you divide it by 2, you get 7, and each of the lines has that same sort of pattern. And one other thing that I really wanted to get with this is that, because the stars, because the Pleiades feel so soft and ethereal and just so like airy, I really wanted the words of this hymn to, as you speaking it, to really evoke that essence of air. So I really asked the AI to rewrite what I had originally written and really emphasize any words, or bring more words that uses like sounds with an F, or like a TH that sounds like th, or like S's, and all these very airy sounds and sibilant sounds. Because as you're reading, or as you're invoking the Pleiades, you're immersed in this airy space, especially if you have like your fennel incense on, and you turn the lights bright. I also have I play with all sorts of AI things. I have an instrument that is somewhat AI-like, where you can set a range of notes that it can play, and it will randomly generate melodies according to, like, it's very difficult to explain, but it's like a circle that turns around, and each note in that circle becomes like a little marble that kind of just bounces around. And every time that marble bounces and touches like a wall of that circle, it will play that note. And one of the things that I can do with that is that I can set the gravity of those marbles, and how light they float and bounce. And so I set that to a very light and soft pace, so the marbles would bounce very slowly, and kind of just create this very spacious and airy soundscape where I had no control. The only control that I had was these 7 notes that I told the machine that it could play. And I just let it play in the background as I was lighting my candles at the time of the election that I had, and really kind of just to immerse myself in that space. And so after I had the whole space set up, the music was right, the colors were right, I went to read the hymn. And here's the hymn. And I'm gonna turn off my camera, actually, because I want you to hear it just looking at the image. So I'm gonna share my screen, I'm gonna turn my camera off, and I'll start reading it. I originally wanted to have the song that I actually played at my ritual, and because it would be fun, because it's randomly generated, it wouldn't sound exactly the same. So every time you're playing this, you're getting a different thing. But I wasn't able to figure out the tech for it. So there's no song, but you're more than welcome to play your own music if you'd like. Just make sure it's something very light and airy and floaty, and you'll be right there in that space. Well, that's it. Let me share my screen. Let me just get the image up. Oh, sorry. I realized that if I share it like that, you also see the poem, and I want you to just see the screen, the image, sorry. Brett, can you confirm that you can see the image?
Absolutely.
Sweet. All right. So it goes, in celestial spheres, daughters who weave the veil of night, guiding silent seekers with their ethereal starry light. Whispering Maya, she of dreams and shimmering glow, sows the seeds of phantom visions in the sapphire ebb and flow. Wise Electra, swift as thought in silver-tinted flight, shares the shifting secrets woven in the quiet twilight. Fair Alcyone, bathed in love's soft, soothing grace, weaves a tapestry of tales, tracing hearts in gentle lace. Brave Taigeti, aflame with courage's fervent might, ignites will to face or fears the darkness darning light. Asterope, born of radiant rays and earth's sweet sigh, binds our souls to life's rich soil beneath the boundless sky. Seleno in celestial grandeur, so very high, links our spirits in sacred strands neath the watchful starry eye. Merope, adorned with ageless wisdom's quiet reign, in her depths of knowing we find strength in every gain. Wind spirits fair and fickle at the sister's tender feet, plant potent seeds of knowing, their whisper soft and sweet. Gossamer spirits, ethereal and thin as breath, unfurl the veil to unseen realms, life's dense with shadowed death. Above them floats a genie's lamp, a beacon in the vast, wafting the calming scent of fennel in the ethereal contrast. Not sleep, but a trance in its fragrant, gentle dance. We're granted a glimpse, boundless as the stars advance. Seven sisters, starry hosts, lend your ethereal might. May your power, Numa spirit, descend in the hush of night. Enchant this image with your essence, make the obscure clear. Gather diamonds, whispering spirits, let their secrets reach your ear. Pleiades star cluster bright and our hearts ignite, illuminating your souls in the hallowed silent night. And that is it.
Beautiful, Joe.
Thank you.
I don't know if you were able to read the chat, but there's lots of wonderful things happening there.
I will read it later because it really distracts me. So I apologize.
I hear you. It does me as well. Especially there's like big heart happening here, anniversaries, deaths, births. Estella also new grandchildren in at this very auspicious time. And I see now in this Taurus light lint on one of my white candles. Yeah, maybe I'll share a little bit about my process today. And I would love to hear, like I saw a few chats about charging my crystals in the sun right now and this. So many of you, I'm sure, have studied about the crystal correspondences with Bohemian stars and plant correspondences. Many of you, names I see here, I know are in this grounding your fixed stars into your astrology web course that we've been going through for this last month. So you've been hearing all about it. But the Pleiades, I think as Joe just mentioned, fennel, frankincense, the color white, white candles, preferably 7, they'll say, for the 7 sisters. or the seven mothers or the seven wives. They've had so many different names throughout different mythical times. And fennel. So I've been collecting all this gear, and it's been collecting me, and I'm doing all this work. And those of you in the course know that I've chosen to wait to kind of consecrate this talisman that I'm working on to increase my terrestrial and my celestial sight for June 11th, for this time when Mercury is going to be right with the Pleiades and culminating here in California, just an hour before Maya changes signs into Gemini. It's a place that we often associate as Mercury's house, right? Let me share a few pictures with you. I think just a very important, like, it's so beautiful that in our day and age we have markers at the gates. For those of you who prefer tropical zodiac calculations as I do, Regulus, the heart of the lion, whose stone is garnet, by the way. In August of 2012, Regulus processed or moved from more than 2,000 years in tropical Leo into tropical Virgo. So for the rest of our lives, because precession, the amazing third motion of Earth that brings the tropical signs, the equinoxes and the solstices and the directional zodiac, which is what the tropical zodiac is, retrograde through the constellations or through sidereal signs, or we can see it the other way, like if you fix the directions of Earth to Gaia's spine, as I like to say, or the sword of our stone, the world tree, the rotational pole that defines the cardinal directions and the cusps of the cardinal signs. You can see over great periods of time the stars processing or moving forward through tropical zodiac degrees at a rate of about 1 degree for 72 years, right? This is the long con. This is the pace wins the race kind of Saturnian large cycle, or much larger than even all the Saturn cycles, right? The Platonic year, the turning of the ages. So at this time in our incarnation, we're really blessed to have some stars very close to the ecliptic that mark powerful places. Like Regulus is now marking this cusp of Virgo, of Leo and Virgo, tropical Leo and tropical Virgo. So like when you see the moon or a planet at Regulus in the sky, you can know that that planet is shifting signs right there, shifting from Leo to Virgo, unless it's a planet moving retrograde, then from Virgo back into Leo space, okay? Zubin al-Janubi certainly competes for the greatest star name, is a star that's very close to the ecliptic plane, the path of the sun, like right on it. And in our day and age, that star that's typically drawn as the fulcrum of the scales is at 15 degrees tropical Scorpio, this cross quarter point halfway between the 0 Libra, the west equinox as I call it, and 0 Capricorn, the solstice. And now the Pleiades, they mark this gateway between tropical Taurus and Gemini. So when we see things like this is a photograph I took on August 20th, 2022. Let's make that larger. In Hovenweep. It's a very beautiful site at the Four Corners, as they're called now. And some of you were there with me, and we got lost in the amazement of the sky. But this is Aldebaran, one of the Bohemian stars, and the royal star, the Eye of the Bull, and the Pleiades here, who also have a name called the bristle on the back of the bull. My dog, who you might hear barking, Isabel, has taught me a lot about that, because when she gets her bristle up, and you can just see the cluster on her back. It's an intriguing thing. So there's the bristle, and here's Mars, who tends to bristle, coming through on that night. This was the night that Mars moved into tropical Gemini. And we went on this longer than expected walkabout, which was pretty fun, and saw mountain lion prints and all sorts of other things throughout the night, but saw so many stars. All right, here's another one. This is Moon with the Pleiades. We were watching a video of this as we came in. This was about 2 months ago today in March. And then a little bit later in April, this was Venus shining at the side of the Pleiades and through fig leaves of a tree that we planted not too long ago right out here. This was this morning. So like all this gear that I'm assembling and my partner Scorpiana as well, to create, like embody and bring some of that Pleiades guidance like close. So with this Pleiades New Moon rising, right, this is like the only kind of window in our house. It's above a bathtub where I decided I should soak in salt during the time. We put these crystals on the lead. So quartz crystals is known to be a Pleiadian connected device. And then frankincense and fennel is all there. And throughout the day, this thing's just kind of started growing. So this is as the sun was climbing up, we put our Pleiades beings out here on this kind of fence shelf, and sage dome and tourmaline on one side. But these are some other things that wanted to come in. This apple tree that they're in front of is a Anna apple tree or Anna apple tree, and yeah, it has deep connection and important mystery for us, beyond what I feel free to share. But this kind of unborn apple or unfinished apple that's under the crystal on the left was maybe the most important contribution that came in, and then the white rose. And you can see perhaps under that crystal on the right, there's a couple little seeds of life. Those are like elements that I plan to keep around to like kind of wear to have this connection happening. On my walk with the dog today, after the lamp arrived, so the genie lamp, instead of me putting a lamp on my talisman, which is often done, like inscribed there, I'm going to use that to burn frankincense to send all my stuff through and get it charged. I'm not sure yet what to do with the fennel, but I found this like fennel wand on our walk today, which seemed kind of fun. And yeah, the Pleiades, as Joe described, are often known to help kind of enhance our sight of the celestial and the other worlds, like our ability to connect with spirits. They're also said to be very good for your terrestrial sight, though interestingly, the opposite thing is said when you have connections with the Pleiades, or any like fuzzy thing that we can see in the sky with our naked eye, but isn't just one star, like clusters and nebulae, traditionally are said to cause eye issues. In this course, many of you were there for this study group on Wednesday. And we were like, yeah, okay, well, let's like look at people that we know who have struggled with eyesight. And we looked at Ray Charles's chart, actually. And then we went through this list of stars that are traditionally associated with blindness. Because like, I'm just not want to believe it. Like when I see these stars, I know them to just be beautiful and powerful and helping beings. But as we know, sometimes our struggles on Earth are the most helpful things as far as the evolutionary path of our soul is concerned. And Ray Charles, in one way or another, in all these techniques that I've been teaching, and projections and parallels and parans, had connections with like each one of these stars. So it was a very interesting thing to see, and like nice to feel some confirmation of the techniques that we've been working on, and some support for some of these ancient delineations. When you start studying fixed star stuff, it gets pretty heavy real quick. You got to bring a heart full of love when you go read some of this old astrology, for sure, and maybe especially with the fixed stars. But I think very importantly, like Joe and I recently had a conversation for the class just about like what is magic and why magic at all, you know? And part of that is like, responding to our challenges in a way where we can bring our will in alignment with the will of the one and only thing to kind of course correct, if you will, or take some of the challenges and turn them into blessings. And yeah, that's my intent here. So I was glad that the genie lamp arrived today. Been waiting for it. And this I wanted to show because at least in the Northern Hemisphere space, it's such an image of May. Right, May, who was named for Maya. I'm going to get back to that. So Let me show you this. Joe, is this on your screen, the stars?
Yes, they are.
Okay, cool. Well, there's a lot of stories about the Pleiades here being chased by, a hunter, an old man, or a bear in some of the mysteries. And I just want to say that's because the sky spins, because the earth spins beneath our feet. So every day, Orion will chase the Pleiades through the sky. Now, it said this is why actually Zeus turned them to doves, so that they could ascend to this safe place of the heavens. And I think it's interesting that they chose to rest on the back of a bull who seems to protect them from this hunter who continually chases them. Now, there's maybe better images for the hunter than Orion. Like Osiris or Asur was said after his death and his journey through the Duat, through the underworld, to become the stars in the sky that many of us know as Orion. This Orion sword that holds the Orion Nebula, this beautiful birthplace of stars that looks like this, is also perhaps in, a different part of Osiris. If you know the tale, there was a magical golden phallus fashioned so he could have an heir with Isis, who many say, let me certainly take the dog away as I say this, is this brightest star in our sky that follows Orion or Osiris, or let me say Asur and Aset to honor some older names before like Dog Star was a thing. Anyway, but I'll let you see them in this view, which you may know more. This golden phallus of Osiris was fashioned, and magically his queen Isis gave birth to the sun of our sky, Horus. And it's one of many, many tales from around the world that I believe says that our sun was born right there. That for the Maya, for example, these three stars, Orion's 2 feet and Al-Natak, the easternmost of the belt stars, are said to be the hearthstones that surround the smoke of creation. And the Lakota people, Stellarium astronomy software helps me here, call this place of the heavens the sacred hoop. This is when our back is to the galactic center. So we're looking at the galactic edge, which is the other place in the heavens where the ecliptic, the path of the sun, and since our solar system is relatively flat, the path of the planets as well. That the ecliptic, the plane of our solar system, like our neighborhood, crosses the plane of our galaxy. Right? It's like our city, the Milky Way, in 2 places. And one is at galactic center, and one is here at the galactic anti-center. And perhaps, I don't know, the biggest story of the sky of our day and age, and one that sadly I feel is not taught by many. This was shown to me by Daniel Jamario of the Turning of the Ages Mystery School, that Earth's pole, which means what I found, 0 degrees tropical Cancer and 0 degrees tropical Capricorn, now they align to these galactic crosses. This is a once in 26,000 year phenomenon, and it's a big deal. The Lakota people say that our souls come from this place, the sacred hoop, and that we'll move back through there to be purified on the way to the sacred space after we die, and that after we are, right, you see the stones are heated here in the fire pit, which most of us see as the lion's head, brought into the Inipi, the sweat lodge, as are we. And then it said we walk this spirit road, that's the Milky Way, to a place that sets in the southwest. It's the Golden Gate, the galactic center. But there are many stories about this place. It's said to be the racetrack. Very importantly, it's the track that Bear ran for us, for the two-leggeds, to help our species survive after we had lost reverence long ago. And maybe I'll tell you a bit of that story now. Yeah, it said that we had lost our way, and through the ignorance of humans, many animals were going extinct. and many nature places as well. And so it said the four-legged held a council to speak about this great problem, and that they decided that the only thing they could do was to extinguish the two-legged before we killed the entire world. Well, fortunately for us, there was a little bird in the windowsill gazing into this meeting. This is Magpie. And when he heard that they were going to kill all the two-leggeds and he looked down at his two legs, he said, oh, that's me. And so he flew to other two-legged ones. He flew, in fact, to the most wise, who was Owl, and said, listen, I overheard this meeting and they're going to kill us all. They're going to kill the two-legged because of what the humans are doing. And Owl said, well, we need to find a new plan. And the two-leggeds proposed to the four-legged ones that instead of just this extermination, that they should have a chance to prove their worthiness, and this would be done through this race. 4 times around the great racetrack, one for each of the directions, one for each of the breadths of the tree. And if four-legged won, then they would have their way and their two-legged would be no more. But if two-legged won, then we would be allowed to live and be reminded of the ways of earth and our connection to spirit, vows for the above and the below. Buffalo was the champion for the four-legged. Buffalo is fast and strong and has great endurance. And bear stood in for us, which is pretty nice because bears typically run on 4 legs, you know. But the bear is perhaps even stronger. And indeed, he kept up with the buffalo. They were kind of neck and neck, or the buffalo would surge ahead and then the bear for 3 laps around and then the 4th. But just at the end, the buffalo pulled ahead and the bear wasn't going to be able to catch. He was out of breath. He was out of strength. He was out of energy. But in this moment when it was sure that we would all be no more, a little two-legged being jumped off the back of the buffalo and ran across the finish line before he got there. And this is the tale of Magpie, when Magpie saved our lives. The reason why I wanted to tell it to you today is because that racetrack lives on Earth, in a place that some have come to call the Badlands. That's a white man's name, as is Devil Tower, which is a sacred space there, and a place we now call Wyoming. So these are like, you know, the borderlands there, Wyoming, Dakotas. And there's this great racetrack on the earth. And on this track, there are these many beautiful and intriguing geological formations. Perhaps the most of those is this place that you, I'm sure, have seen, that's known as Devil's Tower, right? Well, there's actually a great movement that's happening now, and hopefully it won't be long for that name to go away, that new name, and to be replaced with older names for this sacred space, like the Bear's Lodge or the Bear's Den. Find a picture of that amazing space to bring up here now. But perhaps many of you are picturing it in your mind. And if not, or you haven't heard of this place, I will help. Just looking through course keynotes that have recently been presented. And I missed the mark the first time, but this has to be the one. All right, good. Right, so here's a beautiful photo I wish I could say that I took. I have not yet been to this place. So this is a photo I found online. Wally Pacholka, as you can see, thanks to Wally. Wow. It's said that these strange striations in this place, the Bear's Lodge or the Bear's Den, were the result of the bear clawing And the reason why is he was chasing, in some stories, some braves, in some stories, some young girls, in some stories, there were many bears, in some stories, one of the girls actually playing with magic that was beyond her powers became the bear and chased her own sisters. In all of the stories, those who were running away from this bear found their way to a stone and climbed above, hoping this would help them. And it was not nearly tall enough to do anything, but they prayed. And as the bear came running towards them, the stone grew like a tree, but so rapidly, bringing them up into the air and higher and higher. And the bear just scratched and ran around, scratching, and tried to climb the stone and just cut these grooves into the place so that it looks like this today. This is from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Perhaps you are familiar with the movie. Intriguingly, right, all these who are kind of answering this call feel pulled to this place that, you know, it's kind of like on the tip of their tongue, but they just feel like it's this fantasy place until cats like see it on TV, like Richard Dreyfuss here, who, by the way, was born with the Pleiades rising in Gemini. And I love this image of his crazy man paper mache of the Bear's Lodge on one side and the Gemini twin here on TV. This is when he realized, having chased his family away through his obsession about this place that was in his mind, that this was an actual place that he could visit. When he did, and so many other who were called did. This was this close encounter of the third kind, an actual connection to these, well, beings from the sky, if you will. Well, for me, I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing because we're talking here about a sacred space that has long traditions with these beings in the sky, the Pleiades, whose stories from so many places in the world speak about how they lived here on Earth and how, because they were chased and ran away, they had to make their way into the sacred space, a safe place, you know. So one thing I want to point out before I go a little Western again is the Bear's Lodge here. Because while this is this formation here on Earth in a place we now call Wyoming, and all of these stars of the sacred hoop in the sky also have, as above, so below, geological Earth bases here in this place. And some people say it's where they came out of the Earth after surviving a great cataclysm within our mother's body. Yeah, it's a very sacred place. And so may Bear's Den or Bear's Lodge reclaim its rightful place, at least in our name for this space. So I want to bring the kind of Western view here again. I think maybe on our way, let's just take a quick stop at the Mula Pin, the oldest zodiac we're familiar with from Babylon. For some reason, they don't color the bull in here, or the bristle on the bull's back. But I just want to show you this image for Orion. It was called the true shepherd of Anu, the god of the heavens. And I like that image a little bit more than the hunter, but I'm learning to love this image of the hunter too. So back to this kind of Western or Greco-Roman view. And you see Orion there chasing the Pleiades, who sit on the back of the bull. For the Lakota, the sacred hoop is this: it's Capella, which we know as the goat star, Amalthea, whose milk-fed baby Zeus, Castor and Pollux, the Gemini twins, Procyon, the herald of the dog, or the bright star of the small dog, one of the Bohemian magical stars of Mercury, as is Capella here, and as certainly is Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, and the star of Isis, the queen. We continue on to the leading foot of Orion here, Regal or Rigel, in the sacred hoop. And for the Lakota people, they use the Pleiades to complete this circle here in this sacred space where the ecliptic, the path of our solar system, intersects the Milky Way, the plane of our galaxy. Many astronomers today work with this star, which is a Bohemian star, a royal star, Aldebaran, to complete an asterism that they call the winter hexagon, the same group of very bright stars in our sky. Not so bright today, at least many of them have gone away because the sun has gone to visit them now. So I'm just going to bring you to sunset, this Stellarium astronomy software animation, thanks to that amazing free software, cast for where I live here in the Bay Area of California. And let's stop there. I mean, we just had new moon. It was in the AM morning hours where I live. And I imagine by the time moon sets, it's just going to be too bright out to see any sliver at all. But I don't know. I've seen some magical things this week alone, like Jupiter re-emerging from a lunar occultation just a couple days ago. So I can hope, What I know I will see, because clouds will allow, it's clear out right now, is this amazingly bright, beaming Venus now, who, by the way, is between Capella and Procyon. And you can look, if you're in the northern, well, anywhere, like up, when you see Venus, to find Mars, who's currently kind of forming triplets with the Gemini twins, Castor and Pollux. But one thing I want to just say again, like all these stories of the Pleiades being chased, well, the sky spins, and so this being Orion, or the old man, or I think this is actually the bear, but this is the bear's den. So the sky spins every day. We call this the primary motion, but the orbital motion, which astrologers tend to be much more familiar with, is this way, from the west to the east. Just look, bull here in the west, and then the twins, and then the crab, and then the lion, and the priestess, and the scales as we head over towards the east, towards the ascendant. So day by day, the sun will move through the zodiac this way. Let me just circle where the sun will be tomorrow as I push a magical button that says tomorrow. Well, look where moon is now. And we have much more of a chance to see moon tomorrow, Diana's bow, the sliver crescent, the evidence that she has survived her monthly trial by fire, or is that a recharge in the light? Where will moon be the next day? Further from sun, waxing, yeah? So this secondary motion, the motion through the signs, of course, is not the same. Every planet travels according to its own pace. It takes Jupiter about 12 years to get all the way around the sun, of course, in one, because the Earth orbits in a year. Venus about a year or two, but this will be a long year for Venus, for she will retrograde, coming soon to a theater called You in Leo, and more about that when the time comes. But the moon gets around the zodiac quite quickly, in about 27 and a third days. And so after the moon is at the Pleiades back every month, whether it can be seen or not, she then travels from the west to the east. And I think this is this idea of the moon kind of carrying this story of the man or the bear chasing the Pleiades, and then heading up towards a safe place. And in a couple nights, actually, we ought to see her in that safe place, in that bear's lodge, with the shining, beautiful Venus at her side. So this is now May 22nd, 22, and I hope you will remember to head outside after the sun sets and watch one of these most beautiful scenes that we can see, which is the crescent moon at the side of Venus, and see those twins, not twins, if you will, just beneath these twins, not twins, Castor and Pollux at the time. All right, so there's the sacred astronomy of the thing. My apologies to you who are studying in the grounding the fixed stars into your astrology class right now, because of course that will be redundant for you. But as we say, redundancy is built into every great space mission. Before we move on, I think maybe we'll head to the chart. I want to read this question that came in from Camille, and everyone, you're welcome if you're here at the Zoom space to put questions in the Q&A. If you're watching at YouTube right now, I'll try to get over there and have a look too. So Camille asks, can you say something more about the seven sisters' associations with the planets? I only know them by their actual names: Maya, Electra, Tegati, Alcyone, Kaleni, Asterope. Serope and Asterope, by the way, are the same, and Merope, but nothing about their associations with the planets. Joe, how did you receive that?
It's pretty simple. I got seven, and there are seven planets. Each sister goes for one of them. That was basically the thought process. Um, and I always, whenever I'm like in this magical process, I always try to allow for that. Like an idea like that comes, like there's no source, there's no came from nowhere but my brain. So I will allow for that to be a thing. But you also had that same idea, so you encouraged me to fully pursue that.
Yeah, the seven and the seven, and I haven't heard anyone suggest like which of the Pleiades, which, I should say, like, we often know them by those names, these seven daughters of Atlas and Pleione. Um, but they have seven names in many different traditions. Interestingly, most traditions do speak of the seven and the one that disappeared. In the Greek tradition, some say that's Maya, who chose to leave her celestial fame to live in a humble cave here on Earth, but Zeus arrived there, and fame was restored when, shortly after his visitation, a baby was born, perhaps the most gifted child there ever was, and this was Hermes, who on the first day of his life walked from that cave, relieved a tortoise from its shell, and found some guts in a cow that he had to steal from his half-brother Apollo. Actually, he stole the whole flock so he can make harmony. The first day of his life, Hermes created the lyra, the lyre, the harp. And it was the first time one instrument could play a chord, right? So an amazing, harmonious, magical being, this Hermes. Some say it was another one of the Pleiades who fell from the sky in her pain, for her descendants had lost a great war. So there are a couple planets, if you will, or at least like Olympian associations with the Pleiades, because three of them had Poseidon's children, and three of them had Zeus's children. And when I was looking at that, it almost works perfectly that the first three that come out of the sea and into the air had children with Zeus, right, a god of the air and lightning bolts and whatnot, and the other three with Poseidon, except for Kaleni, who kind of comes up first, actually had a child with, had three children, I believe, with Poseidon, so that blew up my theory. Anyway, one of, I wish I could say who was who, but I'm not going to try because I'd rather not get it wrong. One of the Pleiades birthed a child whose descendants were the line of Troy, and another, both with Zeus, birthed a child whose descendants were of the line of Sparta, right? So in the great Trojan War, one of those sides lost because of that Trojan horse, right? And so she who kind of mothered that lineage that came through Sparta, some say she fell from the sky because of her pain, that it just dimmed her light. Others say it was the seventh sister who had children not with Zeus or Poseidon, but rather with a mortal man. And some say just because she was getting down with mortal folk, and you know how gross we are. But others say it's because of the particular mortal man it was, who was the king Sisyphus, who was not a nice man on earth. And I imagine you know a thing or two about his punishment, right? Sisyphus forced to push that stone up the hill until it rolls down again and push it up again, right? I wanted to ask you this thing about this beautiful piece that came through, Joe. Hopefully the one I have
Yeah,
Uh,
but before we move on, actually, can
yeah.
I say something?
Yes. Absolutely.
Because when I was actually working with the AI to create the hymn, originally I actually had assigned each of the sisters to a planet that I did not ask for it to do. So maybe that's a thing worth exploring.
Wait,
And
the
then
AI connected each of the
the sisters
Pleiades?
to the planets. Well, I sort of asked it to. I didn't tell I didn't tell it which one should go with who, but it did it on its own. And if
Ah,
you read the poem on its again, 'cause I did omit the names of the planets, but I have the original that the AI actually wrote. That
I would
doesn't.
love to know who Maya was paired with.
Yeah, I can read
All of that
what it
would be
gave me.
intriguing.
So
Please,
originally,
happy anniversary, by the way. I saw that pop up earlier.
oh, happy anniversary. Okay, so originally it was moon kissed Maya, she of silvered dreams and lustrous glow, so seeds of phantom visions in the still sapphire below.
Well, that
Which,
actually comes from Ovid, part of that.
oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Mm.
cool. Then fair, no, whispering Electra, quicksilver voice and silvered flight shares the shifting secrets in the shimmering twilight. That's of course Mercury. Um, Fair Alcyone, bathed in Venus's soothing soft embrace, weaves wreaths of love stories, tracing hearts in gentle lace. And then goes Taygeti, aflame with Mars's fierce, fiery, fervent might, ignites the courage to face fears, illuminating the night. Asterope, born of solar rays and Earth's sweet breath, binds our souls to mother soil, anchoring life and death. And then Seleno of Jupiter's throne, celestial sphere so high, links our spirits in sacred strands beneath the starry sky. And then goes Merope, crowned by Saturn's rings, wise in her silent reign, in her depths of knowing will never drown in vain. It's cool, but I prefer my version.
I do too, but how amazing. And, all we have to do is find that cat and ask why
Right?
this star with that planet. I will say that in the what these days we typically call the Vedic tradition, the Pleiades mark the nakshatra, the lunar mansion called Kritika, and it actually in the Vedas, in Rig Veda, was the first nakshatra. Typically, students of Jyotisha of Vedic astrology these days learn it as the third. So something happened there along the way. But there's this tale that these seven stars were the seven wives of the rishis, who are the seven stars of the of Ursa Major, the ones that many of us see as the Wain or the Wagon or the Big Dipper. And if you look there, you northern hemispherians, in the handle of the Dipper, one of the three stars of the handle is actually two stars side by side. And some they say this was what was her name? Amba, maybe. No. I forgot the name of the Pleiadian wife who it said in the tale was the only one not to be enticed by Agni, the sacred fire, during his visit. But the other six were, and so they weren't faithful to their husbands. The one who was now resides at her husband's side, and that's those two stars, Alcor and Mizar, that are side by side in this asterism that many of us know as the Big Dipper. Well, this sacred fire, I imagine that's the sun. Yeah. So sun is Surya, Agni is kind of a different thing, but I'm pretty sure that sun is a fiery being. So every year, in this sense, Agni's sacred fire visits the Pleiades, yes? I mean, so many of these ancient stories are transmissions of ancient astronomical wisdom. And they're also said to be the mothers, and I could go on and on and on, but I think we have some other things to do. I will just really encourage you to read tales from many lands. I want to read this that came in the YouTube space. First of all, that a magpie just flew by for dawn, and that Kaylee loves them. Me too. I actually was working with magpie feathers and the frankincense out there today. I love them, love them, love them. Anyway, so Chel Koro writes, I've read somewhere that in Noongar culture that Venus was also a sister and the rest are sad, waiting for her to return. That's cool, because Venus only visits the Pleiades about every year or two, and sometimes that's under the beams of the sun. Sometimes as an evening star, like I witnessed not long ago, sometimes as a morning star, right? And some of the stories, like from this land we now call Australia, Venus, some say, was the one that was chasing them, that they had to run away and come to their abode on Earth, which would likely, by the way, be this time when the Pleiades are aligned. Well, the sun is aligned with the Pleiades, and therefore we just can't see them. They, like last month, they could be seen in the evening sky. Now the sun has just chased them down. And until the sun separates by far enough so that they can have what's called their heliacal rise, reborn in the morning sky, there's just no Pleiades for you. So in Tales from Many Lands, they like came to Earth for a month or two, you say, and this really depends on where on Earth you're looking from, and also when in time. But it used to be said that the Pleiades will disappear for 40 days and 40 nights. There's that number is in a Jupiter cycle and in a Venus cycle as well. Wheels within wheels, that's part of our gig, friends, in this place of the mysteries. Yeah, they work a little bit differently than they used to. So we see the Pleiades mentioned in the Bible. We see the Pleiades in Hesiod's working days and in many other kind of agricultural transmissions of like when the Pleiades disappear, they set, it said, in May. And that just means the sun has chased them down and now you cannot see them again. Oh, then it's time to do some kind of thing at your farm. And then you do another thing at November time when they rise opposite the sun. I think actually in May, it was when they reappear, when they're reborn in the east. And that's going to happen now in June, because this precession thing I was talking about before, that's like 72 years for 1 degree. That means the pace moves through one sign, right? And the signs host the sun's travel about every month, right? We know like the months or the phases and the Gregorian months especially are not really keyed to the travel of the sun, but it's close, right? So 72 years per 1 degree of precession of the equinox or procession of the stars means that traveling through one sign's worth of space, or 30 degrees of the ecliptic arc, requires about 2,160 years, right? So if we go back then, right, we're looking at this time, and even before then, like Hesiod's working days, so things have changed, right? Like Maya, again, is named, May, the month of May is named for Maya. It's like one of the Pleiades. And May showers, right? So what we just heard from one of our friends participating here about this idea of the Pleiades weeping. And in fact, I want to show this apple tree again, because the Pleiades have weeping sisters also. They are the Hyades and the Hesperides. It's like different crews of sisters. And the Hesperides are said to guard Hera's sacred apples. One of the labors of Hercules was to go get one of those, you know. And he actually required the help of Atlas to do so. Atlas, who is the father of these crews. The Hyades, by the way, which we'll be working with in the School of Earthstrology sometime this year as we're kind of moving through these Bohemian stars, when we find our way to Aldebaran of the Eye of the Bull. It's the bright star of the Hyades cluster, is said to be these sisters who cry for the death of their brother. But one of the reasons why they're associated with crying and tears is because they would be seen transformed from the evening sky to the morning sky at this time when there's lots of rains. I was wondering, Joe, and I might have missed it when you said it before. These two pillars,
I
were
did not
they
talk about them.
referencing Atlas?
Yes, I was. Their parents.
Beautiful. Yeah, so Atlas and Pleione, in
Yeah.
this sense, their parents. Yeah, so Atlas, I'm sure you know his punishment at the end of the Great War between the Olympians and the Titans, and Atlas is one of the Titans, like in the crew with Kronos of Saturn and that. Yeah, he was forced to hold the heavens from the earth. Right. Some say this is the Atlas Mountains that span Morocco and Libya and Algiers, I think. I'm geographically challenged in this moment. Maybe not. Maybe I won. But anyway, right, the idea is he's holding the heavens and this is his plight. And so some say the Pleiades were just sent into the heavens so that they could mourn with their father because they were aghast again about this torment that he was put through and this punishment. But yeah, I loved seeing those pillars. It's interesting, like when we were kind of communicating um, about elements of this art piece across the last couple of days. There was something I was going to say there. Oh, right. Yeah, I saw the pillars, especially because you were speaking about the seven stars and the seven planets, and it's like, hey, which planet is which? And I was like, oh, I could see the moon, and I could
Hmm.
see the sun, and I was then kind of going into kind of Kabbalah zone and like the pillar of oh, somebody help me out. All I can remember right now is the pillar of mercy. Joe, do you have it on the other side?
Uh,
The pillar of
I
severity,
yes,
right?
I
And
was
that's not
remembering
how
mercy.
these played out, but you and I were communicating about that. And it's amazing. I didn't even really like see Atlas and the pillars at that time, right? And then Pleione, of course, an Oceanid, like a goddess of a nymph of the seas. And so we have the waters and the mountains and the pillars, and you did it again. And then, yeah, one thing that I wanted to see, and I'm so honored that you put this in, was that bear that's hiding there in the sky. I was happy to see in the chat before somebody write that, oh, I didn't even see that bear until you mentioned it, which I
Oh,
was very
nice.
much encouraging, right? And that
Cool.
bear coming more from the these stories from this land of the bear's lodge and the bear's den, and the bear being the one that chases the seven daughters or the seven sisters or the seven braves, or there's many different versions of it. But yeah, I like that bear as a symbol of Orion's chase, or the chase of the old man,
Hmm.
tales from other
And I
lands.
was also thinking too about like because in the lesson that we were having a discussion about magic the other day, we were talking about how like with these with these traditional texts, you usually just get like a handful of uses for like a talisman of a planet or of a star or something like that. And like especially after I added the bear in there, and we were having that conversation, I even wondered if like the Pleiades might be also a good talisman for like freedom and for fleeing from something. And I don't think that's something that I saw in any of the sources that I was referencing. So I was wondering what you think about that. If
Well, I think it definitely makes sense. And it's where, and I'm just like tripping. I think I made this connection, but not, but I just made it again and it felt like it happened for the first time. But like when I ask people to find the Big Dipper or like the Small Dipper, people will usually point at the Pleiades. But that connection between Ursa Major, at least kind of like in this Hindu tradition now or Indian tradition, we have like Ursa Major stars who they actually don't see as a bear, right? And then the Pleiades married. But if we then like bring the bear into, or the Greek bear of those stars, and then you also have the bear coming in that way, right? So less
mm,
of like the hunter and more of, I don't know, a husband or partner or whatever we want. Um, and I think that the myths like this can really speak for the stars. I mean, I've been not surprised, but also so surprised in the study groups for this class as we've been going through them, um, and encouraging students to like instead of going to look at a chart and see which strong stars were aligned, to instead like think about a person's life and imagine which stars or constellations should be active in that chart. And the one that that's freaking me out right now and not at all is this cat Derek Hall, who's just became a National Football League football player. He was born 4 months premature. His mother was 5 months pregnant. He was 2 pounds, no heartbeat, all this, right? And I figured that there was going to be strong alignments for him in one way or another with the Charioteer constellation, because the Charioteer's story is Eric Donis, who like was crippled but created the chariot and then moved faster than any human being ever had. And he found his way to the sky and holds the goat and things that I don't want to take our time to tell right now. But I knew that constellation would be connected to Derek Hall. And the cool thing about star work, it's nice if you have a birth time, but you also kind of don't have to have a birth time. And when Saturn rose where Derek Hall was born, right, 4 months premature, the chariot was rising along, right? And so Saturn and the obstacles and the hardships in this chariot, right? And he's become like a great racer, like dude's hella fast and super strong. And there were some other star alignments that actually looked to like speak of success in mid and later life. And I was like, sweet, because I'm a fan of the team that he's about to play for. So let's go Hawks. All right. Anyway, yeah, that's what I feel like, you know, if you read a story about a constellation or a star, it's helpful, I think, to just pause and think like, well, there are people in my life who I know carry that essence, or are there, you know, legendary people I've heard of that like seem to have that myth, right? And then go check, right? And I feel like we don't do enough of that in astrology, like hypothesis research, right? And so this might sound like I'm addressing a very different thing than what you were talking about, but I'm not, because I feel that in our magic, like magic is life, right? And it is story. And it's kind of like how we are bridging our connection between, in this case, for you and me, Joe, and many folks here, right? Like Earth and the heavens, right? I mean, of course, Earth and Earth, like when I was out witnessing that Jupiter occultation the other day, first of all, I wasn't going to go. I was going to dream into it, and then I just couldn't sleep. So I couldn't not go. And I had been trying to figure out where to go, and I decided to go because it was in the first degree of Taurus to a cow pasture. And I crawled up in this like super green hill, probably stepping in cow poo, and found a place, and I was just like settled in and looking around and kind of connecting into the directions as I always do. And great blue heron flew by, just super slowly, like right in front of me and where the moon would rise and off to the galactic center. And just as I'm tripping about that, owl comes through and flies right above my head, right? Later, I'm contemplating like what I was up to 12 years ago when Taurus Jupiter was last a thing, you know? And I was like, oh, I met the medicine. As soon as I said that, 3 deer run out and run up the hill towards my house, which is far from there. I had to drive there. But in the Maya Solkin, my day sign, as it's called, is 3 deer, right? So I'm like, that's true. And right then I'm like looking up to the heavens to say thank you. And this huge hawk flies through and circles once and then lands on this gigantic electricity tower, right? So all those things for me, like I can't interpret them yet. Or I don't know that I need to, or they'll come through when they want to, if I'm meant to have them, you know. But that, like what that moon Jupiter occultation means, it's all there, you know. And especially in Taurus, like that language is going to come through, right? So I had a teacher once, it was not an astrologer, just like a great mystic. He's a teacher still, although I haven't listened to Neil for a long time, but Neil Kramer really helped me kind of get out of the conspiracy hole Not that I'm not still looking for truth in all places. I just do it in a healthier way than I once did. Um, but anyway, I spent some time with him in the mountains in Washington, and I asked him, I was like, well, because I found myself like when I would tell these myths, there were certain pieces that had to be like they were concrete. But the way I would weave myself from one to the next, and I would just create characters out of nowhere, and so I talked to Nail and I was like, hey, like, who am I to rewrite a myth? And he said, I'll tell you who. You're a fucking human being, and that's your right and your responsibility, right? And so that to me, more than anything, would be my answer to this. Like, as these myths are informing us about how these starry stories were heard through many tongues in many lands, like, we're going to see them come together. We're going to see them also contradict. That's something we have to deal with as astrologers. As you know, Joe, you master one paradigm and you're running as fast as you can from the truths of another, but how we can hold all of that. But when we find like kind of commonalities and they start speaking to us in our language, right? And I like how you're using tools like that are also of this earth, but are new beings, if you will, these like AI beings that are coming in who I'm still like, I don't know about those cats or whatever, but you're using them like so, or working with them, or they're using you, or who knows, like this relationship you're forming. It's really brilliant in creating magical and beautiful artistic pieces like this, and in that relationship or in these many voices that come to us and through us, like it's going to recreate the story. I mean, even dig the truth that, 20 years ago, Alcyone was in Taurus and is now in Gemini. Like 2,000 years ago, you could farm according to Hesiod's instructions and the general latitudes of Athens and Rome. If you do that now, you're done. Because like things have changed and they will be even more different in distance in 2,000 years. I want to address this because it's kind of here. And interestingly, I opened the Q&A just as I said once again, Tales from Many Lands. Nicole asks, when you say Tales from Many Lands, are you referring to a specific text, or would you? I mean, like, don't only listen to the myths that come from Greece or Rome when you're learning about the connection, like the stories of astrology or whatever you're up to, right? Like, especially the land where you live, the land, where your blood comes from. And just all over the world, like in all different times. That's what I mean by that. Joe, I saw that amazing move you just did in Zoom. Did that mean you wanted to respond to that as well? Or you're just keeping it moving?
Oh, it's my
You're just
astrology
awesome.
habits.
Right on. All right, well, let me get up a different picture here. Maybe this one's appropriate. Do you want to spend some time in this chart together?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Well, I mean, the astrology is for real right now. Maybe I'll share this just because we're reaching a place to take a breath. This course that I've just taught, which is available if you want to witness it in a time that I perceived as the future when it was going down. Like, we still have a study group to go on Wednesday, but it's kind of run its course, and it's this grounding the fixed stars into your astrology. I see many names here, folks who have been participating. It's great to see you. For those who haven't and you're interested in learning more about it, you can go to geminibrett.com/stars, and you will find hours of stuff waiting for you. And there'll be actually things added to that also as we go. But I wanted to share that this is the next one that's about to happen. Buttons. Oh, this is on the screen?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, cool. Fractal time. So progressions, profections, directions. Joe, like the, when we first met, I was really starting to like research this technique that I thought I had invented and then found out it's a thing. But anyway, what we were calling the day per year and day per month, directed profections, right?
Yeah.
I just did those techniques for April 11th when the fixed star course began, and I decided to devote the month to the Pleiades. And I think the ascendant by one of those techniques was on the Pleiades that day.
Wow.
And then on June 11th, this day that the sky has helped me decide, I'm going to kind of finish my own little magical piece through the other technique, the ascendants on the Pleiades. So I'm fucking tripping. I love astrology so much. It's so real. I love like really real astrology that I can go outside and like point my finger to. I like charging a crystal on this special day because I know it's Pleiades, sun, moon, crystal, me, all of us at the center of Earth. I love a transit. Like the little lad that lives here the other day has recently had Mars transiting his sun. And I was able to pull up on Stellarium astronomy software his birth moment. And I show them, hey, like you see these two stars and then the sun? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, let me show you right now. Do you see those two stars? He said, yeah. I said, who's that? He said, Marsy, because Koa loves Mars. I said, this is a Mars transit. Mars right now is in the sky where the sun was when you were born, right? And I love transits because I can point my finger to it. It's not happening in time, right? But it's happening in this space that was like activated by planets or points or whatever in the moment of my birth or your birth or the moment considered, right? But the more you study astrology, and I always say this, like, it's hilarious to me that the rationalists of our day just use this kind of one straw man argument of your signs and constellations don't align, so it's all fake. It's not what it was a couple of thousand years ago. It's like, cool. If they looked at what I'm actually doing on the daily, or what you're actually doing on the daily, Joe, and counseling astrology and trying to figure out more about the riddles of the universe through this amazing art, right? The ridicule would never end. Like secondary progressions where, because I'm now 47 and a half years old, for some reason I think that the moment of time 47 and a half days after my birth is a thing. Like what? Or like all of these different fractal timing techniques, as I call them. So progressions, profections, which really, like a lot of modern astrologers are playing with solar arc directions. It's really a profection, not a direction, because we're also going to learn about primary directions, the old master technique. And we're going to use all these things to just learn more about ourselves and see how our charts are being activated in like different fields of time. So there's going to be 4 Saturday classes. They're all scheduled to be 3 hours, which one of the timing techniques, by the way, correlates with 45 days. And another with 45 years of life. How's that work? It's just 3 hours. I promise you I won't keep you on for 45 years, but maybe 45 days. Anyway, so I wasn't able to get all the things done today, and I didn't want to be in the computer place too much. I wanted to be out with the Pleiades. But all of those who registered for this talk, I'll send you out an email, and folks who have been in the class and are on my list anyway, about astrology's fractal timing techniques. It's going to begin on June 10th, Saturday, June 10th, and run for 4 Saturdays. There'll be Wednesday study groups. It's priced at $108, but $20 off, $88 early bird price until the moon meets Saturn, I think on June 9th. So stay tuned to your email inbox, please. If you don't want to receive anything from me after you see that, then unsubscribe. If you are listening to this at YouTube or some other place in fractal time and you want to hear more about this, there will soon be a website that works called geminibrett.com/time. Right now, nothing is there. All right, well, thanks for letting me take the time to do that. And let's look at space-time. So a Pleiades New Moon, and there's just a lot going on. You know what? I think I will put this character back on the screen. So this is Jupiter, who from some places on Earth was seen occulted by the moon. Like I watched moonrise and there was no Jupiter to be seen because it was literally behind the moon. And then actually through my zoom lens, I saw one of Jupiter's moons come out first. I thought it was Callisto,
Oh,
but now I think it's
wow.
Ganymede because Callisto came out and then Ganymede, and I only saw one, and Ganymede was brighter at the time, so I'm sure it was him. And actually, from some of the stuff I'm trying to work through in my own life and memory lane right now, that one makes more sense anyway. So I'm going with it. And then Jupiter came out, like this photo right here was from 5:17 a.m. on 5/17/2023, and it's basically right when Jupiter was re-emerging from behind the moon. Well, at least thanks for that. Yeah, and that's, so this is like herons and owls and all these things, and then this most magical moment. And I considered that I was born with the sun exactly opposite in the first degree of Scorpio, which I've been considering often, frequently, because of Pluto's recent entrance into the tropical sign we call Aquarius on the square, and Mars, as you can see here during this Pleiadian New Moon. And let's show you right now. He's knocking on the gate of that cusp called Leo. And so we are soon going to have this like fully formed grand cross in the heavens with Mars and Leo opposite Aquarius, Pluto, with Jupiter at their midpoint in Taurus at the north lunar node, and of course the south lunar node on the opposite side. So that seems to be a pretty important figure in this Taurus new moon. Again, for me, I'm so excited to celebrate this last new moon at the Pleiades until 2042. And at that time, I've only showed 3 of the Pleiades here because when I put them all on, they just take up a lot of space. But this is Electra, who is the westernmost Pleiade. She rises first and sets first, and she'll be the last to move into Gemini. This is Alcyone. This is Maya, who will move, as I said before, into Gemini on June 12th for some of you of this year, 2023. Electra moves in 2042. So there will be one more Taurus new moon with Electra at 29:59:58, like right at the gate. And then, so maybe I lied to you when I said the last new moon at the Pleiades in tropical Taurus for 24,000 years, because 19 years from now, there's one of the 7 sisters and their 2 parents over there that still has like a toe in tropical Taurus, at least according to the Swiss ephemeris, which this wonderful Astro Gold astrology software utilizes. And I love seeing, let's play with dial time, that this new moon is kind of between water signs, Cancer, Mars, and Pisces, Neptune. And Joe, I remember that one of the things you were working with in your election was that the moon, after conjoining Sun, then sent this sextile over to Mars, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because in the Ptolemy key, the Pleiades have a connection with Mars. Some say Mars and Moon, actually. The moment that I chose, and for those of you who are in the grounding the fixed stars into your astrology course, you may not have seen the conversation Joe and I recorded. Gosh, I guess it was Monday this week. But we did some elections at the end, and we'll do some elections together in study groups. Another thing I'm liking about June 11th, besides the Mercury at the Pleiades side and like visibly rising with Maya and then culminating with Maya here just before Maya moves into his house called Gemini, is that the moon at the time, in the morning, she's in Pisces, but as the sky spins, she travels into Aries, and there she first sextiles Mercury, and then she carries the light of Mercury to Mars, to Venus. But she's doing this from Aries. And so I'm cheating a bit in calling an Aries moon, like Moon and Mars, together.
Yeah, that's Marsy.
Which I think you can do. That's Marsy, right? And so is this. Yeah, and Mars in Cancer, right? Who has some interesting stories. Now, Mars has been out of bounds in Cancer. Mars y'all probably remember, was in Gemini forever, from like August to May, I think. Usually Mars is in a sign for 2 months. He spent 7.5 months in tropical Gemini recently because his entire retrograde loop was hosted in that sign. And he's been in Cancer for a bit, and he's been significantly out of bounds. He's been, by what we call declination, north of the Tropic of Cancer. The sun can never go there. And he's been stirring it up a bit. I've been certainly feeling that around here. I imagine you all have. Mars is now back in bounds. His declination is, I gotta move that thing, 21 north 49. The Tropic of Cancer is 23 north 26. So Mars has been back in bounds for a bit. And Mars shifting over to fiery Leo, like I bet you we're going to feel that, especially since the square with Jupiter, the opposition with Pluto. We might feel it in some ways we don't want to, but I think we'll also be activated, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about that one, Joe. So the last thing I'll say before I close this thing and open the ears is Venus at this time, like she is out of bounds. So 25 north 35, she's well north of the Tropic of Cancer. And Venus is asking us to release some of the memes that are at the foundations of the cult we call culture. And even in the sign called Cancer, which can be very, well, culture-based and family-oriented and traditional. Like, that's not happening right now. And then amazingly, she's basically following in the footprints of where Mars has been traveling through the last months in this out of bounds way. So I'm actually just going to show you that real quick. I'm rewinding time. Let me put a clock on the screen here in Stellarium astronomy software. And y'all in the fixed stars class know we have this like Stellarium fixed stars training tomorrow morning. I hope to see you there. I'm going to rewind time in such a way that I can just kind of keep these things on the screen. So I was at a retreat recently, and I was tripping on how Mars was right at the, what's the technical term? Like the balls of Castor here. This is a star called Mebsuta. And then this is Mekbuda, which is just fun. This is Wasat. And they're stars that I've learned because they're right on the ecliptic plane. So as I'm watching stars travel through, or planets, the wandering stars travel through the backdrop of the so-called fixed stars, I want to know where they are in the zodiac, right? So this is how we do that work. Anyway, I saw Mars here and was quite intrigued. And then just a few nights ago, so this was April 14th. If you watch here, I'll keep circled on the date, and I'm just going to move through time, and here comes Venus, who is very close. So I see how she's even further from the ecliptic. She's actually, more importantly, in this thing we call out of bounds, even further from the equator. But she's basically traveling in this path that Mars had. And we felt some pretty significant activations. Let me just say with the little one here at home in the recent weeks. And like, in fact, when Mars was exact where Koa's sun was when he was born, he like, through playing zombie tag, intriguingly, should I share this kid's name? I have to, because, well, let me just say, he was like, he ran into the tooth of a kid and had to go get his head glued. They thought stitches, but these days they just glue you up, But the kid is named for one of the winds from ancient Greece. And so as I've been thinking so much about the Pleiades, which help us call forth the winds, I was like, okay. But yeah, like he took Mars quite literally and actually got a head wound, And so the prayer right now is like all this stuff that Mars has been doing through this sign of Cancer, and I want to be careful because I was born in that way, but Mars is said to be fallen in that sign. Like the hope is that Venus is heading even further out of bounds to kind of like, sweep up a bit of the mess he made. I don't know. Joe, how does that land with you?
What do you mean, like the whole Venus out of bounds situation?
Yeah, and cleaning up some of the things that Mars stirred up, maybe, or like bringing a cool, like soft lovingness to some of the things that have been activated by Mars, is the way that we've been foreseeing our best wishes for her travel.
Yeah, I definitely was, even like looking at this new moon, I was a lot more positive, I guess, than a lot of the people that I've heard talk about the new moon. Because I don't work with outer bounds too much because I still don't understand it. I'm still learning. But I was really excited to see that like moon in Taurus, Venus in Cancer, they're exchanging favors and they're able to see each other and hang out. They're having like a good time. Um, so the way that I was seeing some of that positivity was more so through that sort of like share of benefits. And like the moon and Venus are both planets that are very moist and warm and close and promote closeness. So I think that is a really good contrast to that Mars's whole job is to separate things. So to have that reunion, I guess, is really nice. And I'm even more excited too about like Jupiter staying in Taurus for so long now, because whenever the moon goes by Cancer, then they will also be exchanging like their places of exaltation, which is the places where each of these planets are supposed to be just uplifted without any sort of responsibility, and they're just having like a great time. And for Jupiter to enjoy the moon's place, and for moon to be in her own home, but being able to see Jupiter in that way, I think that it does call for a little bit of a party. I know that there's all this T-square stuff going on, but I think that if we only focus on the negative things in the sky, we often overlook the really like supportive and I guess good fortune promoting planets, planetary configurations in the sky. I think that's it's good to also look at the good things and celebrate them, because Jupiter's going to stay there in Taurus for like a whole year, and every month the moon will go through Cancer at least once. So every time we have like this window of a party, which me as a Cancer sun and rising am very much looking forward to.
Yeah, there's a cool piece also with Saturn in Pisces that the Cancer moons will find Jupiter like at the midpoint. And there's just kind of like solid and beautiful Taurus earth, right? It's kind of like sleeping on like moist earth between two streams, you know? And I mean, interesting streams at that. I mean, the Cancer moon trying Saturn and Pisces is intriguing. I will say, when we play with some of these old dignities, as they were called, right? Like some of the accidental dignities, right? This is like our last time to enjoy Cancer Mars as an evening star. Mars at the evening time or in the night is said to be dignified in the water signs, which surprises many. And especially so when he is on the evening side. So let me go. This is now where I am. I'm just like, that's the sun. But in about, Pleiades, sun, moon, me. Here's an hour and an hour. And we'll see at that time, like by essential dignities, this story of Mars said to be in his fall, but also like getting points for triplicity. And I don't like to get lost in medieval scorecards, but when I do, I like to also consider things like sect considerations. And Venus and Mars are said to be of the evening or the night sect, and said to prefer, actually, for this reason, to be in nocturnal signs, meaning earth or water signs, and in a nocturnal place, meaning on the opposite side of the horizon from the sun. And that particular graph table doesn't have a column for. They are also said to prefer to be evening stars, just as Mercury and Saturn are said to prefer to be morning stars. So Jupiter loses some like triplicity now, but he's still on that side of the sun and is going to be for half of 399 days. Wait, that math's not too hard. It's like 200 days from a month ago. But anyway, like I'm really appreciating that. And I love that, Venus and Mars, you can see them in the sky now. It's hard to believe that Venus is in 1,000 times bigger than Mars or closer to us or something like that, because she's just so screaming bright right now. And Mars is not, this isn't like such a bright phase for Mars, and it's a very bright phase for Venus right now. Venus is preparing to pass Earth by. That's her retrograde, and she'll get brighter and brighter day by day. But she's going to get so close to Mars's side and not quite meet him, not quite perfect the conjunction, as we say, before her station retrograde. And then they'll have to meet later. I want to actually show this to y'all. Oh, yeah, let's just do it like this. So Venus retrograde is here on July 22nd, 28.5 Leo, and you can see Mars is in Virgo at that time, so she didn't quite catch him. She'll see Mercury, they spend some time. And then Venus will head between us and the Sun on August 13th, 813, which has so much to do with Fibonacci numbers and golden stars, and so does Venus. Anyway, this is on August 13th, the day of the Sun. And then we will eventually, and it's going to be a long time. Let me show you the next Venus-Mars conjunction. Here. So morning stars in February 2024. And I'm getting a bit out of field and way ahead in time, but that great dance of Venus and Mars, they do like 3 different stories over the course of 6.5 years. That's amazingly profound. And this one is the story of Rapunzel. So I think in the future, I'll tell that story at length, but it's very much a story of Venus and Mars and climbing the tower and falling from the tower and going blind and having our sight restored through tears, which I guess brings me back to the Pleiades. So this beautiful sextile between the Pleiades and Mars, I think that energy, especially considering that, at least for Ptolemy, the Pleiades were considered like something that has to do with like a Moon-Mars combo. And so Mars and Cancer all catch Moon and Aries. Like I'm kind of doing a 2-part thing. I got this one and I'll get that one. I find really intriguing and important, and I agree, like we shouldn't get lost in the challenges and the T-squares and the crosses. I mean, for me, it's all about music and it's tension, right? But tension for the sake of release. Right. And I do think that we're going to experience some significant tension and probably some outer events like this week and some events within, but no, like there are really powerful release places. So one of them that we see actually here in the new moon chart, like this Mercury Saturn sextile, right? He's like, be in your body. That's where the structures of the dreams reside. We're seeing Venus applying to sextile Uranus. And there's a bunch of harmonic things, like Venus is quintile. She's 72 degrees from Jupiter. And these things actually, for me, they say do art to make it through. Like that's always the truth, of course, but especially at this time, there's like so much art and creativity in Taurus, in Pisces, Mars coming into Leo, you know, and there's this tense thing, but it's going towards Earth, be in the body, be in your dance, make love, be in the dream, long naps by the rivers, like have Neptune see you through, which means don't set expectations of how that's going to work. Just go with the flow, you know. But I think this is a really wonderful time to, like the Pleiades, come back down to Earth. And I see art everywhere. And interestingly, when Uranus is involved and Pluto and Aquarius, if we look at this thing from the modern point of view, you probably want to do art with computers. So good job, Joe.
Thanks. That's my thing. Uranus is my guy. Mercury is my first guy. Uranus is the sub. But I really do like that you talked about, I think when you were talking about the Saturn Mercury sextile, about being in the body and like embodiment and all these things. And Um, and that's been like a bit of my Saturn and Pisces journey. I always kind of like try to like do a little activity, especially with transits that I'm really kind of trying to like harness or understand in any way. And like the Saturn, like I was saying, I'm Cancer rising, Cancer sun, and Saturn, of course, is trining all of that stuff. And so I really wanted to like learn a bit more from Saturn and really kind of like spend some time with Saturn and try to understand, because I Saturn is one of the planets that I really kind of am not the greatest at doing Saturn. Um, and so I got bare feet shoes and to really start feeling the ground. And it's such a wild experience to do that, because you don't realize how much you don't know how to walk until you are always walking and feeling the ground beneath your feet, and like really going on like long walks with like either bare feet or with bare feet shoes. I live in a city, so I need the shoes. Um,
Yeah. Because I was gonna
but
say, I think you were born with those.
yeah. um, but what was I saying is that like even just because Pisces of course is related to the feet, and just that, and it's so strange because Pisces, whenever people talk about Pisces, it's always this like very out there thing, this very ethereal and mystical energy, but then it rules the feet, which is so in the ground. And it's really cool what it does to you when you try to like really blend those two spaces together. Because for me, like in this whole journey of walking bare feet on a city and like really stepping on concrete, like the how much I've started to think so much more about like my toes and what they're doing, and actually like using my toes to walk and like grab the ground. And in that effort to really connect to the ground, I'm like really connecting to my mind, and like really like starting to feel like all of the connections from my feet to the top of my head, and how all of that is working together for actually making me walk. And I think that like this whole Saturn Mercury sextile, especially Mercury with like themes of locomotion and like movement and things like that, I think that that might be like an interesting exercise to explore, just trying to like really feel how it feels to like walk, or how it feels to be in like in this place where there's a ground beneath your feet. Because more often than not, especially in the world that we live today, we're very much in these airy spaces where we're in front of computers all the time, or we're looking at our phones and not really thinking about like the outside world as much, because the these screens and these illusions are so realistic and so enticing. So I think that Saturn and Pisces also, to go on a total tangent, is really helping like ground the the mystical and the surreal aspects of just being in the concrete world.
Yeah, beautifully said. Bare feet shoes for everyone. It's a trip to feel the ground beneath your feet. I remember when Anna and I first met, we went for a like barefoot hike in mud in Hawaii. And it was like, yeah, this will probably end up being something. But I need to do it more. You know, they say there's these 4 stages of learning. Actually, I think that's a good place to be here and maybe make our way towards wrapping up. But that it's unconscious ignorance, right? So like the baby at first doesn't even know that crawling is a thing or walking is a thing. But as soon as you realize that people are getting around, you're like, oh, I want to do that, right? And then that's called conscious ignorance, right? So like I'm conscious of the thing I don't know. Um, and then you sort it out, right? And then you have, or I think instead of ignorance, the better word is unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence. Then you get to conscious competence, right? Which is like, oh, I'm walking. But I'm like, and then I fell, right? And then you get to unconscious competence, which is you're just walking around. But then at some point, everything falls apart and you're like, holy shit, like I can't even walk, right? That's because you got barefoot shoes or you went to Qigong or something like that, right? And then you start all over again. And that's kind of the tale of the zodiac and the story of the elements and the shifting of these moons. And it, right, we can see it in these charts, these mundane figures, but so much of this has to do with who you are, your personal chart, right? How the timings like align with you. And I'll say just like no transit like this, activation, no progression, perfection, direction, whatever. Like it doesn't do anything that's not in the promise of the natal chart. It's a really key piece to timings. Like when you were born, in that moment, all of the times were mapped. And actually the times that came before you too. So there's another technique that would say I should look at a chart for 47 and a half days before I was born, which is an intriguing thing. I want to go ahead in time and honor something that Astrid wrote here. There, you know, there's a lot of powerful things that have happened in the chat. Sue, I'm just seeing a bunch of what you found around Kritika, which is cool to see, and I recommend folks read that. By the way, because we're going to close out here soon, you can click the ... next to the chat button, or like where you could write a chat on the right, there's a ... click save chat. For those of you on YouTube, please join my mailing list at geminibrett.com. If you were there, you would have received a Zoom link so you could be on this side. I'm sorry, we don't have time to go check in on the questions there. There was a question here around, is Algol one of the Pleiades? And the answer is no. A very, very different story. I also heard a couple renditions of that story that I have a hard time with because I just encourage y'all to go hear the myth and see who turned Medusa's hair into snakes and try to figure out why that would be. And there will be a time for that because in the school right now, the School of Earthstrology, we are moving through the Bohemian stars, and Algol is one of them, the star of the diamond, and it's a very powerful and beautiful star and a very important story. But I also find that many people read it without knowing that that head of Medusa was taken by Perseus so he could save his mom from the patriarchy. Anyway, so we'll save that tale for another time. What I want to do now, Winter, thank you for that, is to honor what Astrid just wrote, which is, hey, you're talking about Taurus, talking about Cancer, like what's up with Gemini? And we do have Alcyone, Atlas, Pleione, part of the Pleiades are in Gemini. And of course, like Moon's not going to find her way to Cancer without moving through Gemini. In fact, in this moment right now, and very soon after this new moon, the moon has been in Gemini ever since, and is actually at the side of another one of the Bohemian or magical stars of Mercury, a star called Aldebaran, the Eye of the Bull. But importantly, the sun will follow suit, right? Here's tomorrow at this time, the sun's in Gemini, right? And aligned with Alcyone of the Pleiades. So by the way, if you're like, man, I wish I had known about charging quartz crystals and doing frankincense and fennel stuff with the sun today, you can do it tomorrow. The moon won't be there, and the moon is closest to us, right? So she often kind of helps really bring things in. That's why I wanted to start with that Moon Pleiades video so you could feel it, right? But the sun and this fire of mystery, like though hiding the Pleiades back there, is also channeling the Pleiades through. And that's part of what the Pleiades do. So I really encourage you to be outside tomorrow, to be with the sun, to feel Pleiades sun, you, all of us at the center of Earth, that one place where we measure astrology from. And from that place, we will find that the full moon of this lunation, because the new moon was in such a late degree, of course, will not be in the opposite sign of Scorpio, but rather halfway through Sagittarius. And yeah, I think the one thing I want to say about this is that these signs are quincunx, or said to be blind to one another. There's that theme again. And for a very important reason. Taurus is about slowing down and finding the grace of Earth's pace, which means you must avoid the rat race. And Sagittarius is about the great adventure. If you consider a Taurus rising chart, Sagittarius is the 8th sign. So we wonder why Sagittarius will be the death of Taurus. If you consider a Sagittarius horoscope or a Sagittarius rising sign, Taurus is the 6th. So we wonder why Taurus makes Sagittarius sick. You see, it's okay to play with the maps in this way. Why would Sagittarius be the death of Taurus? Because it must journey, it must travel. And that, of course, takes us out of our comfort zone by default, right? Why would Taurus make Sagittarius sick? Because Sagittarius must journey, must travel, and it doesn't want to get hung up on this idea that we should find sensuality and embodiment and pleasure and, do the thing that feels comfortable. And I'm not saying in any way that's all that Taurus is, They can certainly work together, but to do so, they have to open channels to the invisible realms because they just don't see eye to eye. We're going to get some interesting help from beings like Mercury at Uranus's side when it comes full moon time. But I'll just say, these things, it's hard to pet both of those cats with one hand. One way that is attempted is called glamping, right? Where we go and we head out into the great beyond, but we do so with this huge tent and all of our things so we can feel as comfortable as possible. And in that way, you're kind of like not Sagittarian and you're not Taurusing either. It gets really tricky, right? But it can be done. And I will say when the Sagittarius moon is reflecting Gemini light to Earth, we're looking for the truth that is found in the many truths. And when that cycle is seated in this tropical place that we call Taurus, in this mystical place of finding sight even through the blindness, we are reminded that the body is the library and all truths can be found there in the many cells of you. Joe, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the crew?
I don't think so. Just
All right.
Thank you for joining us today. It was a blast, and thank you, Brett, for allowing me the space to share my art and magical creations and my process and all of that.
Thank you, Joe, for sharing the magical creations that open up these wonderful spaces. Yeah, there were some interesting comments just around AI in general, and I just want to say I'm feeling you, and that's a conversation I'm looking forward to having more and more, and I think we're compelled to. But I love seeing beautiful work done with these beings or this being. And I'm intrigued that it wants to first work on its art and poetry. It's like, the things we said it could never do. Anyway, for those of you who just can't get enough astrology, which means all of us, right? I want to invite you to Sue Kind's talk tomorrow at NCGR, San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the president of the board there. I think there's 3 other board members here right now or have been throughout the go. And Sue Kinds is a really awesome astrologer who's bringing us way out to space. She's doing a lot of work with the so-called trans-Neptunian objects or, so-called dwarf planets. And the talk that she's given tomorrow, and it's free, as you can see, is called Next Stop to Illumination, Eris, Pluto's Antidote and Guide to a Friendlier Future. It's a cool sound of Eris. We don't usually hear that about Eris, and I like it. So that's happening at 1 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, Saturday, May 20th. It's free. You just go to ncgrsanfrancisco.org to register. And we here at NCGR San Francisco also do a monthly community meetup. So it looks like the next one's always the first Friday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific. And it looks like hosted by Greg Nell and Kevin Mallet, talking about Jupiter and Taurus. So come join us. All these things are free. This talk tomorrow is going to be amazing. You can find me at GeminiBrett.com. If you make this say GeminiBrett.com/stars, you can find your way to this Grounding the Fixed Stars into Your Astrology course we've mentioned several times. There's a bunch of recordings there waiting for you. And again, GeminiBrett.com/time will soon be a link that takes you to this fractal time course that starts on Saturday, June 10th. Joe, what about your website? I tried to get there yesterday and it was like coming in April.
Yeah, I actually took it down very
Not
recently
happening right now. All
to do
right.
some renovations, but you can find my work over at Twitter and Instagram and all of the social medias, and it's always Astro Boy with an I, Joe G.
Astro Boy Joe G. Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe, for spending time here. And thanks so much, folks, for being here and sharing your hearts and talking about births and deaths and anniversaries and all of the things, right? Earth is so real. Taurus reminds us to know that some of the greatest mysteries are found not by trying to get out of this place, but by trying to get into this place. So let's all do that. All right, friends, we will see you